Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson argued that New Hampshire's first-in-the-nation primary status should remain, despite objections from the Democratic National Committee during a town hall on the University of New Hampshire's main campus in Durham. She also discusses health care, women's role in politics, and environmental policy.
Should I use this? What do you think? Yeah, I think it is better, right? Okay, I'm so excited to see all of you. Is somebody doing a this is Marianne Williamson thing, or? You probably know. You don't have to. You don't have to. Hi, everybody. I'm Marianne Williamson, which you did know. Thank you. 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 And you probably also know that I am running for President of the United States for the Democratic nomination. Now, let me ask you, how many of you, because how many of you are students here? Okay. Are you all New Hampshire voters? Yeah. I want to begin by saying how moving it is to be able to participate in this process. I have some serious criticisms of the way my government operates, and I never lose sight of how fortunate I am that I am free to say so. And I'm very aware that there are countries, particularly as a woman, who, if I got up in front of people and said a fraction of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight, I could be hauled off, tortured, imprisoned, or even murdered. So let's start with that. Let's start with the fact that sometimes in life we do have to have a serious conversation about what's wrong, but we should always hold a larger context, which is our desire to make them right. And when it comes to the state of America today, I do believe there's some good news and some bad news. And the good news is, number one, what I just said. Number two, the fact that we can be here. I find the primary system very moving. I found it very moving last time when I ran. You're aware, and you have a very different mentality from those in non-primary states. You carry tremendous power. You have the power to determine the conversation that dominates the presidential election. That's like huge. There are people in other states who, yes, I can donate to you, I can volunteer, but my vote is going to be so late in the game that it won't dominate the conversation. Yours is different. And I found, as I feel looking at all of you today, I find in New Hampshire, I also find it in Nevada, in South Carolina, and so forth, a seriousness with which you take that responsibility. And also, I know you know that regardless of what the DNC is doing in terms of the campaign schedule for the primaries, that nothing they do can strip New Hampshire of your significance. Regardless of what they say or do in terms of delegate selection, et cetera, the country will know how New Hampshire votes. And a presidential election, as with any political campaign, is a long job interview. And I see it that way, and I'm sure you see it that way. So I'm interviewing for the job. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so. And I am eager to tell you what I will do with the job if you give me the honor. I am 71 years old, and I remember a time that I know to many of you seems like a long ago, far, far away, almost like a fairy tale, because I'm going to tell you things that you might intellectually know are true, but that part of you would go, that can't be true. So I'm going to say it anyway. I want to describe the 1970s in the United States to you. Are you ready? The average American worker had decent benefits. The average American worker could afford a home. The average American worker could afford a car. The average American worker could afford a yearly vacation. The average American couple, if one wanted to stay home to be with the kids all day, that would be fine. They could still afford to pay their bills. And the average American couple could afford to send their kids to college. That was the 1970s. There's a word for what I just described. It's called a thriving middle class. We no longer have a thriving middle class, and there's a reason for that. We don't have a thriving middle class because over the last 50 years, there has been a massive transfer of wealth to the tune of $50 trillion out of the bottom 90% of Americans. We have so shifted resources of wealth and opportunity into the hands of a tiny group of Americans that at this point, it could be argued that we are not even a functioning democracy. We are a functioning oligarchy. Our government is now a system of legalized bribery. The power of money, the power specifically of corporate money that derives from institutionalized corporate greed, is now so great as to have turned our government into that system of legalized bribery, where representative, legislator, governor, president, one after the other, do more on a regular basis to serve the short-term profit maximization goals of their corporate donors than they do to serve the goal of the safety and the health and the well-being of their constituents. Even when the expressed desires of their constituents is obvious for all to see. That situation that I just described to you, which is corruption in its purest form, is now so baked into the cake that that system will not disrupt itself. It is so powerful. There is a matrix of corporate powers from insurance companies, and their greed is why you don't have universal health care, pharmaceutical companies, and their greed is why there are people rationing insulin in this country, big food companies, big agricultural companies, big chemical companies, which is why there are carcinogens in your food that there aren't in other countries, why there's PFAS and other toxins in your water that there aren't in other countries, chemicals in pesticides that we know harm a child's brain, gun manufacturers whose institutionalized greed is literally killing children, big oil companies which are raping the earth to the point where there is a valid conversation about whether or not there will be a habitable planet, or at least whole swaths of continents within decades, and the proverbial military-industrial complex, whose institutionalized greed is so great that we have fought wars to do nothing more than fill the coffers of defense contractors such as Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing. This is the way Washington works. I'm a Democrat. I think the Democrats are a lot better than the Republicans, but enough with thinking that's enough. Neither political party, because they are so infused with corporatist interests, is going to do what it takes at this point to disrupt the system of corruption that now dominates not only our government but our lives. It's time for the people to step in. Now, I want to remind you that we've had tough times before. I want to start, actually, before I even talk about the legacy of the course corrections that have been necessary in this country, I want to go back to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, okay? 1776, 56 men signed that declaration. It was a radical document. It was a radical document in 1776, and I remind you that it's a radical document today. And it posited notions that were completely antithetical to the prevailing times, because the prevailing times had to do with the idea that kings and queens had a divine right, the divine right of kings, and their cronies, their rich friends, the aristocrats. And the way societies were ordered, they were deemed entitled to all the resources. They were deemed entitled to all the resources, and everyone else was basically not that much more than a serf who lived to serve the ruling classes. The founding of this country was theoretically to overthrow all that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. All men are created equal, that all men are given inalienable rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, that governments are instituted to secure those rights. Governments, therefore, were not instituted to just do whatever the king or queen wanted. The government is instituted to secure the rights of everyone to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it goes on to say that if the government is not doing that job, It is the right of the people to alter it or to abolish it. Radical stuff. That is America's mission statement. Just like when you go into a building and they have the mission statement written on a plaque on the wall, and companies have a yearly retreat so that everybody can take in what that means. You know, in the Jewish religion, it says every generation must rediscover God for itself. When you have a mission statement, when you have a profound truth, you have to revisit it. That's what John Adams said. He hoped that July 4th we would revisit our first principles. It's not enough to have those principles that I just mentioned, you know, inscribed on marble walls or written on parchment somewhere. Every generation has to take it in. Every generation has a whoa, 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 what does that mean? Because when you ask what it means, your life kind of becomes different. Now, out of those 56 men who signed that declaration, and I remind you how brave they were, because if the British had won the war, they would have been hanged as traitors, okay? That's where it starts. Enlightened, important, revolutionary, world-changing. But that's also where it got very gnarly, because out of those 56 men, 41 of them were slave owners. So the story of America is that we are and have always been both and. We have always been and have lived out in every generation, including ours, the struggle between those whose hearts are ablaze with the possibilities. Because really, when you say all men have the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what you're saying is that everyone should have the right to self-actualize. Everybody should have the right to be whoever they want to be, do whatever they want to do, as long as they don't hurt anyone else. Radical. Radical then, radical now. When you think about U.S. politics today, and how many people are deemed that somehow not have that inalienable right, why else would we be arguing over transgender rights? Why else would we be arguing over racism? Why else was the Civil War fought? You either mean this or you don't mean this. So every generation has lived out the struggle between those whose hearts are ablaze with the concepts, who have been willing to struggle for those concepts, have willing to sacrifice even their lives for those concepts, versus forces inherent in every generation, even the first one, who for their own ideological and or financial reasons have no intention whatsoever of seeing those principles actualized, and have proven in even the most atrocious violent ways that they will do anything, even if it means people die, to make sure that those principles are not actualized. Now, every generation has a chapter, every generation lives out the struggle. But where's the good news? The good news is that if you look at the trajectory of American history over time, we do tend to self-correct. We did have slavery in this country, but it was responded to with abolition. We did have the institutionalized suppression of women, but it was responded to with the women's suffragist movement. We did have overreach of capital by the Gilded Age, and it was responded to by the establishment of organized labor. And we did have segregation in the American South, and it was responded to by the Civil Rights Movement. In all of those cases, the people who were rebuking tremendous institutional powers of injustice had no reason to believe that they could be successful. They didn't stand on the principles they believed in because they had a guarantee of success. They stood on the principles they stood upon because it was the right thing to do. And ultimately, they prevailed. So, as I see it, we're not going through anything now that other generations have not gone through before. The issue now is not a one single institution, but an economic paradigm in which short-term profits for huge corporate entities, part of this matrix, of the insurance companies, of the pharmaceuticals, of the big ag, the big food, the big chem, the gun manufacturers, the big banks, the military-industrial complex, and big oil, their profits come before your safety, their profits come before your health, their profits come before your well-being, their profits come before the habitability of the planet if we do not stop this. And the message of my campaign is it's our turn now. Now, I know a lot of people just sort of feel right now a lot of hopelessness. And one of the reasons I wanted to mention, particularly to those of you who are students here, I wanted to mention the 1970s because my concern about some of you who are young is that you don't even remember such a time. Those of us who are older are like, what the hell's going on here? Because we remember a time when it wasn't like this. And that's why I think that those of us who are old enough to be the sort of keeper of the story want to remind you not only of the story of, the history of the United States, but the story even in one or two generations. This need not be. And we have been trained in this country to expect too little. We have been trained in this country to expect too little. Every other advanced democracy and some other countries have universal health care. We have 1 in 4 Americans living with medical debt. 18 million Americans who cannot afford to pay the prescriptions that their doctors give them. 85 million Americans who are underinsured or uninsured. 68,000 Americans who die every year because of lack of health care. Now, what will they tell you? Oh, it's not better than it is because the situation in the United States is complicated. No, I'm here to tell you. No, the situation is the way it is in America because it is corrupt. You don't have any other advanced democracy where people are rationing their insulin. We have 1.3 million Americans who are rationing their insulin. Now, you have 600,000 homeless people in the United States, and let's not forget how many people who are homeless in the United States are actually working full-time. So what's that about? Let me tell you what it's about for some people. Some people, they knew, well, if I pay my rent, I won't be able to afford my insulin. If I afford my insulin, I won't be able to pay my rent. But at least the kids will have a parent. That is not a choice you should be making in the United States of America. But we have a political system where we're not even supposed to talk about this. And you know what they say about the candidate who is talking about things like this? She's unserious. No. They say that because I am the one who is talking about what's serious. This is a game. This is a performative game that is being played. You're supposed to be so entranced by the horse race that you don't notice the deeper things that are going on in this country. And it's interesting for me because I found this last time I ran, and I see it this time too. People asked me after I ran last time, they said, what did you learn? I said, I learned that the system is even more corrupt than I feared. There is a political media industrial complex. Because it's not just that they are there to serve corporate interests, they are corporate interests. So they're not going to protect you from corporate interests, they are corporate interests. That's number one. And number two, I learned that the people, the voters, are even more wonderful than I knew. I don't feel from anybody in this room anything other than an adult, mature listening to what I'm saying. And you can feel it. You can feel it in a room. I don't feel, and this is not just in New Hampshire, this is wherever I go around the country, Americans are not stupid. But Americans have been trained not only to expect too little, but Americans have been trained when it comes to politics to think like sixth graders. And it's so odd because I could say to any two people in this room, you don't know you, but I think you should go out to dinner later. And this would be my guess. My bet, if you went out to dinner with her, that within an hour, you'd be getting pretty real. You wouldn't just be chit-chatting, because Americans get real and get deep, and do you have children, and where do you go to school, and what's happening, and blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to politics, we've been trained to keep it shallow. We've been trained to, no, we're going to look at it this way. Here tonight, I don't even want to go into the specifics, but the game's being played to suppress the democratic process when it comes to my candidacy is absurd. This is America. Who should run? Whoever feels called to run. That's who should run. And who is qualified to be president? Well, let's look and see what the founders say. The founders say in the U.S. Constitution that in order to be president, you had to have been born here, you had to be at least 35 years old, and you have to have lived here for the last 14 years. Now, if the founders had wanted to say, oh, you have to be part of a political class, they didn't even want there to be a political class. They didn't say you have to have been a lawyer. They didn't say you have to have been a congressman. They didn't say you have to have been a senator. They didn't for a reason. They were leaving it to every generation to decide for itself. What do you think is the skill set? What do you think is the expertise most required in your generation to face the challenges of the times in which we live? Now, there is a political establishment that would say to you that you should only consider qualified to be president someone whose career has been ensconced for decades in the car that drove us into this ditch. That only those people should possibly be considered qualified to drive us out of the ditch. I object to that. I reject that notion, and I submit to you that maybe you would want to reject it as well. The problem is not that I'm not a political car mechanic. We have plenty of political car mechanics in Washington. You hire them. The problem is not that we don't have enough political car mechanics. The problem is that we are on the wrong road. It's not that we need another technocrat. We need a visionary. And I'm not saying I'm the greatest visionary in the United States of America, but I will say I'm the only one running for the Democratic Party. Franklin Roosevelt said that we would not have a fascist takeover in this country as long as democracy delivered on its promises. On one hand, some people say, Marianne, how could you run? Don't you understand the fascists are at the door? I'm running because the fascists are at the door. They should never have gotten this close to the door. And the only reason they got this close to the door is because democracy has not been delivering on its promises. Democracy delivering on its promises means universal health care, means tuition-free college and tech school, means cancellation of those college loan debts because they should never have existed. There was tuition-free college and tech school before the, you guessed it, 1970s. Should mean free child care, should mean paid family leave, should mean guaranteed sick pay. It means guaranteed living wage. We have 1/3 of America's workers living on less than $15 an hour. Half of them cannot find a place to live. And a living wage in most major American cities is over $20. Now, what do they say? Oh, and this is what they say in the 1930s. This is what they said to Franklin Roosevelt. Oh, that's socialism. That is the oldest PR con in the book. It's called democracy if that's what the people want. What do you think, what do you think the fire department is? For that matter, what do you think the police department is? Except a situation in which the care for the common good, that's supposed to be the government's job. The government's job is meant to broker a balance between individual liberty, and that means also economic liberty, to broker individual liberty with concern for the common good. But what has happened over the last 50 years with this orgy of privatization is this complete abandonment of the common good, this complete abandonment of the public sector, so that a very few Americans with such access to such tremendous capital that they can dominate government and that they can send the tentacles of their predatory capitalist malfunction into every corner of our society. And I say this not as someone who is an anti-capitalist. In any hybrid economy, thriving hybrid economy in Europe, there are capitalist functions, there are people who make a lot of money. What, you think Norway, are there more billionaires per capita in Norway than in the United States? But you have a dedication to your Declaration of Independence that all of us have an inalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Does a child who's going to school every morning praying they won't get shot, where's their inalienable right to happiness? And what about the 1/2 of Granite Staters who are food insecure? It is intolerable to me. It is intolerable to me that there's even one hungry child in the United States. It is completely unnecessary. We have the highest poverty rate of any advanced democracy. We have the highest child poverty rate. Half of your families have hungry children. This is outrageous. And we're supposed to continue to vote in the people who have presided over this malfunction? And it is a malfunction. It is more than dysfunctional. It is malfunctional. And as I said, only the people can change this. And the only way to change this now is through a revolution at the ballot box. And nothing And I'm not pandering to you, this is just the truth. No ballot box in this situation is more important than the ballot box in New Hampshire. That's just the truth of the matter. We need not only that economic Bill of Rights, we also need a Department of Children and Youth. The American child is at risk. I don't think there has ever been, well, I don't know if there's ever been, there's certainly not been in my lifetime or in any modern history that I know, where one generation so actively exploits a generation behind it. It is outrageous, the level of abandonment of the needs of our young that is now built into the system. Everything from those college loans, which should never have existed to begin with, to the fact that there's not free state colleges, tech schools, the fact that our young people do not have universal health care, the fact that our young people have faced such a housing crisis, the fact that we have so many Americans. Now, I want to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if the answer is yes to my question. And if the answer is yes, I'm going to ask you to please keep your hand up because I want everyone in the room to be able to see how many hands are up. Okay, are you ready for this? Okay. If you are a young person, or if you have ever heard a young person say the following words, please raise your hand. Under normal circumstances, I would be thinking at this time in my life about having a child. But given the state of my economic circumstances and what I look to in terms of possibility and in terms of the state of the planet and the environment, I'm not sure it would be the responsible thing to do. How many? Please raise your hand. Now, I'd like you to look around the room, please. Now, clearly, that is more than half the people. Now, I don't know about you, and thank you. I don't know about you, but every time I see that, I feel like crying. Something is so wrong. That's not normal. That's not normal. That's like a species shutting down. We need a Department of Children and Youth. We need a Department of Peace. Even Donald Rumsfeld, who worked as Secretary of Defense under George Bush, said we need to learn to wage peace. I'm not a pacifist. I think that there are times when there's reasonable use of military force, but I look at the military like I look at a surgeon. If you're going to have surgery, you want to make sure you have the best. America needs to have the best surgeon, and America needs to keep a best surgeon on hand. But a reasonable person tries to avoid surgery if at all possible. We need a Department of Peace because peace building is an actual thing. There are 4 factors which, when present in any situation, this could be a corner of an American city or another city in the world. 4 factors, when these are present, statistically indicate there will be a higher incidence of peace and a lower incidence of violence. Greater economic opportunities for women, greater educational opportunities for children, a reduction of violence against women, and an amelioration of unnecessary human despair. We have a Department of Peace. We'll have a peace academy, just like we have a military academy. And we will actually train people. We will actually train people in peacekeeping and peace-building skills and actually send them to strategically wage peace. Just like we play war games, we need to play peace games. JFK, John F. Kennedy said, if we don't get rid of war, war will get rid of us. I want to be a president who thinks 100 years ahead and then reverse engineers from there. Some people think that I'm very naive. Some people say, she's so naive to think that you can just kind of figure out how we can love each other enough to make the planet, what we want it to be. Let me tell you what I think is naive. What I think is naive is to assume we will necessarily even survive as a species for another 100 years if we don't at least try. And the one other thing that is a major pillar for me that I want to present to you, because I want you to know, if you give me the job, there are not going to be a lot of surprises here. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and then you're not going to be surprised when I try to do it. It is time to dismantle the war on drugs. Okay? Richard Nixon came up with this in 1971. One of his aides, John Ehrlichman, went to prison for his role in the Watergate scandal. When he came out of prison, he spilled the beans, he said everything, what was actually happening, and he said, among other things, that when Richard Nixon declared drugs #1 public enemy, he knew that that was not true. He knew that that was not true. It was primarily an attack on black people, by the way. We have spent $1 trillion on the drug war. It has not in any way helped. It has actually exacerbated the situation. We spend $100 billion a year now. When I was in college, we had 300,000 people were incarcerated in the United States. Today, it's 2.3 million, and almost half of all federal prisoners are nonviolent drug offenders. It actually feeds the prison industrial complex. You know, everything's related to everything, as we know. It is time for a fraction of that $100 billion that we now spend on the drug war, for a fraction of that, we could have a network of world-class recovery options. We should not be treating drug addiction as a criminal issue. We should be treating it as a health issue. It has now become such an ubiquitous problem and challenge, including, God knows, here in New Hampshire. We must recognize what we are doing now is not working. And that really sums up the essence of the attitudinal core of my campaign. What we are doing now is not working. We can't just continue to tweak it here, tweak it there. We're always playing whack-a-mole. Whack-a-mole. Well, we'll try to deal with the environment over here. We'll try to deal with child poverty over here. We'll try to deal with this over there. No. There are root causes here. And that primary root cause is institutionalized corporate greed. Yes. That is what is happening here. That is what is happening. It is undermining our democracy, and it is time for the people to step in. And when we take the Declaration of Independence into our hearts and move from a transactional model of politics where you're just dealing with the symptoms, tweak it here, tweak it there, and become transformational about it, then we bring our hearts and our souls to this. That's what the abolitionists did. That's what the women's suffragists did. That's what the early labor organizers did and are doing now. And that is what the civil rights workers did. We must bring the fullness of ourselves to this. This is so much deeper even than who you vote for. It's what you stand for and what you see as what's going on in this country. And what I see is that it is time to end a 50-year aberrational chapter of American history. It's time to cut the cord. That system will not disrupt itself. It's our job. It is time to begin again. It is time to initiate a season of repair. The president does not have a magic wand. I won't be able to go in there and, within, 6 months you have everything you want. I'm not even saying that within those 4 years you'll have everything we're talking about, but I will get us started. I won't be able to turn the ship completely around in my term, but I'm telling you something. I can get it around the curve. I know I can. And part of that will be my willingness to talk honestly to the American people. And during my 4 years in office, what my hope is that those of you who are younger are going to get really busy during those 4 years, because it should be a time of incubation. Because when I'm done with my 4 years, I'm going to hand the baton to you, and you will take it from there. And this will be a bad memory of a time when our democracy almost was destroyed. Fascists were at the door. But you know what? Winston Churchill said, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing after they have exhausted every other option. And that's so true. We are often late to get there. But when we do get there, we slam it like nobody's business. It is the 11th hour, but it is not midnight yet. There have been political miracles in this country. Abolition was a political miracle. Women's suffrage was a political miracle. Civil rights movement was a political miracle. The establishment of the labor unions was a political miracle. There's a rumbling under the surface now. These are revolutionary times. And once again, as JFK said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. This is not a moment that is sustainable. There are too many stress points. Too much human despair, too much stress on the planet, too much is in disrepair. It's going to go one way or the other. It's going to break. It's going to break either in the direction of greater democracy and greater justice and a real revitalization of what this country is meant to be, or it will break in a direction that is dystopian and could be worse than that, and truly could be a neo-fascist direction. If you give me the levers of power, I promise you, I will do everything within my power and use every lever of power in the executive branch so that we make an economic U-turn in this country, so that the government gets its heart back, so that all of us are inspired to get our spine back, to remember what it means to say we're Americans and we don't take that shit. Thank you very much. Thank you. 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 I so appreciate that. Thank you. So let's talk about anything you want to talk about. If you'd like to ask questions, if you'd like to make comments, I can certainly do that for a few minutes if anybody would like to. You have any questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
I like how you phrase what you call it, the corporate media complex. Is that what you say?
I'm sorry, say it again.
The phrase you use, the corporate media complex?
Well, I talked about the political media industrial complex.
That's what it was. Okay, I couldn't remember the phrase. But they have shut down the possibility of a democratic debate organized through the DNC. The DNC, I don't remember what year it was, but there was a recent court case where they made very clear they're a corporation.
Yeah.
They're not the party. These people are the party. You are a member of the party. I work at Worcester State University in Worcester, Massachusetts, but I'm sitting in a college. I think that you have the right to go to C-SPAN and say, this is a road to the White House, and I'm holding a debate, and I'm inviting my friend, Bobby Kennedy, and Cornel West to sit down with whatever moderator you want to choose, and we'll sit down and have a roundtable debate. None of this standing at podiums, yelling at each other and not listening. But those are four candidates from different perspectives that are trying to talk to the people. And I've been watching the UAW workers on strike. I saw you there with some old-timers. That was wonderful to see. And I listened to the part-time workers there at the UAW and the commentator with Jordan Sheridan's Status Quo independent media interviewing them. And they were shocked to hear they've been working at $15 to $16 an hour for 4 years or 7 years or even in one case 10 years. And I sat there and I thought, I'm an adjunct professor. I've been working at Worcester State University on a temporary part-time basis for going on 22 years now. In a state where they require you to have health insurance, we predated Obamacare. And yet the state, as my employer, does not provide me any benefits. So it is not just the worker building trucks on the line. It's the people who are supposed to be educating those beautiful children that you want to run a department for. So I would offer my college, I would offer my church in Peterson, Massachusetts, on an idealistic New England comment. Invite people who want to listen, who want to talk, and we'll find you a venue.
Thank you very, very much. So the story on debates, of course, both Robert Kennedy and myself, we've talked a lot about President Biden, please debate us. The DNC has made it very clear there will be no debates. Now, Bobby Kennedy has said that he's going to be making a big announcement October 9th, right? Or whatever. And it seems to be indicating, I don't know, I don't have any personal inside scoop, but the way the press is reporting it, it looks like he might not be running as a Democrat anymore. I don't know. And of course, Cornel West is running the Green Party. My hope had been, and my campaign had made a lot of requests to colleges in New Hampshire that they would host a debate between Bobby and myself. I had put that on Twitter and asked him if he would do it. WMUR said they wouldn't host it, but that they would cover it. But no college has come forth and said that they would. Although now, who knows what Robert Kennedy is going to do. I think we'll all be waiting to hear what his decision is. You know, you don't save a democracy by suppressing a democracy. We were told that the college Dems here at this college no longer wanted to promote my talk here tonight. I found that very sad. I'm running for president. What am I doing wrong here? This is not good. This is not good. That's not how things should be. And I'm polling higher than the majority of people who were on that Republican stage the other night. and yet they have regular appearances on MSNBC, CNN, which both apparently have blackballed me. I've heard that Fox is here tonight. Fox has been kind to me and had me on. I mean, we all know they don't have a problem messing with Biden. We all understand what the game is, but the point is, I do believe, I did an interview this afternoon with a podcast with the National Press Club. And I do believe that it is the role of the press. They not only have the rights of the press, but like all rights, those rights come with responsibility. And I believe that their responsibility is to separate fact from fiction, and their responsibility is to expose the American people to their choices. And for that reason, I thank both you in the back, both C-SPAN and Fox. It's important that people, particularly at a time like this, that you have that you have a knowledge of what your options are, and particularly here in New Hampshire. I hope that you'll be hearing all of us who are running. I think that's your responsibility to yourself and to your country. I have a very different agenda than Joe Biden, very different agenda than Bobby Kennedy, not that different agenda from Cornel West, actually. But Cornel, once again, is not running as a Democrat. But whatever you're doing, I think that you're listening at this time when indeed the fascists are at the door. You better believe, you know, this is what elections should be at a time like this. This is what politics should always be, particularly at a time like this. Anybody have any good ideas? You have any good ideas? You have any good ideas? Anybody have any good ideas? And we should be, and no one has a monopoly on the truth. No one gets to own this country. Even Eisenhower said that the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative. So we should all be just putting out our ideas. And the idea, as you said, of any political party or any institution suppressing that is not good. George Washington warned us about that in his farewell address. He feared that political parties would become factions of men more loyal to their parties than to their country. And John Adams saw them as the greatest threat. Should political parties exist? Yeah, I think political parties should exist. But they should not exist with the power to override or to manipulate or to thwart the will of the people, basically. They should be facilitating democracy. That's what they should be doing. And I'm a Democrat I grew up in a Democratic home. I think of myself as a Roosevelt Democrat. And I believe that the party traditionally stood for unabashed and unequivocal advocacy for the working people of the United States. And when it returns to that unequivocal advocacy, it will not only win in 2024, I think it will stay in power for a very long time. And that's why I'm running, and that's why I'm running as a Democrat. Any other, yes, sir.
I'll give you my opinion first about a certain subject, which is the media.
Yeah.
And my concern about the media is that, my understanding about democracy is that it's difficult to have a functioning democracy if people aren't well informed. And my experience with the media, I've been a Democrat all my life, is that the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, etc., aren't giving yourself, Robert Kennedy, other candidates, the visibility that they should be getting, so we, as the electorate, can make intelligent decisions about who we want to run for president.
Exactly.
And it seems as though, we're, as a population, we're in a significant deficit because of that. And today, I was out here talking to some of the college students, and they didn't realize that there are other people running in the Democratic Party for president, which I think is shameful.
And that's why the fact that the college Dems actually withdrew their promotional support from this evening's talk. Mm-hmm. That's what we're training our young Dems. That's what we're training young Democrats to suppress a candidacy. It should be about.
They canvass with apps.
Pardon?
They canvass with apps. And it's nothing. It doesn't feel at all personal, and you don't know where you're
well,
going.
But this was
a
specific
with you to train you.
But this was a withdrawal of support. This was a specific withdrawal of support.
I hear you.
One of the concerns that I have is that I don't know if the DNC, which is a corporation in itself, has an effect on the mainstream corporate media. And it seems like, to me, when I'm watching MSNBC, I watch it every morning. You know, I watch Morning Joe. I watch some other programs as well, but mainly on the internet. It seems as though there is this major void about discussion of issues.
That's exactly right.
And which allow me and everybody else
That's
to
exactly right.
make good decisions. And if there's a high percentage of people that are unaware of even who's running
That's
for
exactly
president,
right.
that's pretty pathetic.
It's more than pathetic.
Yeah.
It's wrong. It is undemocratic. And it is lacking in journalistic ethics. Once again, we do have C-SPAN here tonight, Fox, I was told so, and I'm grateful for that. But you're absolutely correct. And if people are not exposed, you know, 71% of Americans, when asked in the polls about me, said they don't know anything about me. And then people say, oh, well, you're low in the polls. Actually, given my lack of exposure, I'm actually pretty high in the poll. But I need your help here. Yeah. But I need your help here in New Hampshire, and you're absolutely correct. I was feeling that last night here, I was feeling that last night. Let me just say this one thing, and I'll give it back. Last night, I was watching. I turned on television when I got to my hotel room, and both MSNBC and CNN were all about the vote, whether or not to keep the government open. We can't even count on these people to keep the government open. But meanwhile, there's no discussion of poverty. There's no discussion of the real issues of climate change. There's no discussion of what's really the despair and what's really the root causes of the despair in this country. It's a game. It's a ruse.
One thing that I'd like to invest an effort in is having an influence over the DNC. And I think there's in my neighborhood, there's a lot of Democrats. But I think that most Democrats that I speak to are unaware of the position the DNC is taking regarding the debates, as well as their position about having the first primary here in New Hampshire and how that may affect the race. Obviously, Joe Biden didn't do well in the primaries, back in 20. And my concern is that they're changing which primary they want to have first because of that. They don't want that negative perception of Joe Biden. Joe Biden may be the best candidate, fine, but at least make it a fair competition.
Absolutely. Wendy, I don't even
So
know what this
I
is.
would like to find some ways to kind of incite people to get involved who aren't Democrats.
Right.
To influence the Democratic Party. And I'm
Correct.
looking for ways to do that.
Absolutely. So what this woman had said earlier, in 2016, Bernie was running against Hillary, right? If the DNC had just kept their fingers off the scale, I don't know who would have won the primary, whether it would have been Hillary or Bernie, but I can tell you this. If it was a fair primary, then whoever won, I don't think Trump would have ever been president, because I think all Democrats would have felt good about it. And obviously they did so again later. Now, in 2016, as this woman mentioned, there were some Bernie supporters who went to court against the DNC and said that the DNC had rigged that primary. The DNC's argument was that they are a private corporation, and therefore they do not owe it to people to have a fair election. And they won. They won with that argument. So now they're very overt about it. They don't even pretend. There is no daylight lost between the DNC and the Biden administration. They are very overt. Our job is to help the president get reelected. And there's a connection between that and the fact that the young Dems would withdraw their support. This is not good. This is not good. And I'm glad, and take me personally out of the picture. This is not good. And yes, and then people don't know there's anyone else running, or people buy these ridiculous narratives about, they character assassinate. You know, and we could go down so much that we don't even need to get to. We can just stay on the high ground of what the conversation should be. But it is disturbing, it is undemocratic, and of all the people in the world who can let the DNC know that this is not okay with you, the voters in New Hampshire. How do you influence? Well, the biggest way you can influence the DNC is with your vote. Is with your vote in the primary. The biggest way you can influence the DNC right now, to be honest, if each of you, for those of you who feel that this campaign should exist, who feel that my candidacy contributes something to the conversation, that you think, regardless whether or not you know for sure that you would vote for me, you think that this is an important contribution to the conversation, what I would like you to do is to think of 5 people that you know, that you think, I think they might like to hear her, because they are people who think like you think, who you could just send the flyer to and say, she's going to be here this week, I think you should go and hear her. That's number 1. Number 2, if you feel like helping us, if you feel like coming down and canvassing with us on the weekend, and I'll have Wendy say a few words about that in the afterwards. Other than that, write a letter. If you see somebody told me that they were watching Ari Melber the other night, and on MSNBC, and Ari Melber said, of course the president doesn't have an opponent. And I said, get online right there and tweet out, hey, Ari Melber, he has 2 opponents. Just the invisibilization, just stand up around it. Don't let the erasure occur and the invisibilization occur. So just make your voice heard. You know what they tell women? They tell women, if you're in a back alley and somebody starts, something dangerous, just start yelling. Just make noise, don't be quiet. And then what you say or do specifically is up to you. If you speak from your heart, so many times I was with a group of volunteers just yesterday. Hi, gentlemen. I was with a group of volunteers, and they were all so eloquent in speaking their hearts. I said, you don't need me to tell you what to say. Speak your heart. And for those of you who feel moved to come canvass with us, it's so meaningful because in New Hampshire, people expect to open their door and have somebody canvassing for a presidential campaign. So they don't treat you like it's weird that you're there. And you just speak from your heart why you feel it. And we all have to, if we're going to transform our country, we have to transform ourselves. And one of the ways we have to transform ourselves is I think we have to realize that in order for us to turn this ship around at this very pivotal, critical moment in American history, we have to start making civic engagement and political activism part of what we think of as a well-lived, meaningful life. Because we've fallen for this thing that if we just elect the right president, and then I'll show up for the midterms, it'll be okay. And what we're saying now is actually no. Because corporate lobbyists are in the offices of our elected representatives all day, every day. And if they show up every day, every hour, it's not enough for us to show up every 2 years or every 4 years. Anything else? I'm sorry you guys weren't with us. I'm sorry. Okay, yes, ma'am. Yeah. Hi, honey.
I actually didn't know this was going on.
You what?
I didn't know this was going on today, so I came
Serendipity.
last second. I was actually in the dining hall eating dinner, and I just kind of looked up what you were and what your core values were, and I saw your thoughts about healthcare, and I just wanted to come along and see what you had to say about it. I do not know any political lingo. Like I can catch on to the ideas of what people are saying, but I am a pre-med major.
You're a what?
I'm a pre-med major. I want to become a doctor someday. If that ends up working out, MCATs are scary. But with universal healthcare, I think a lot of the reason why people are opposed to it sometimes is just the misinformation and miseducation that allows people to make opinions of whether or not they don't like it. When I became a pre-med major, I didn't have any parents or family members really that had done anything with medicine before, so I kind of went into it blind. I didn't have any expectations for it, and I didn't know what to expect. And as I got more and more involved with it, I got to see how the systems work within the US, like with the EMS system and just how insurance works and how healthcare works in general. And like I've seen all the trials regarding like people trying to put patents on just genes or like a gene they've discovered. and just trying to explain it to like the judge in court, like what they're trying to patent in particular, like with CRISPR. So I guess what I'm saying is I think there's a lot of people within our government at the moment who have been lawyers, who have been in the political science majors, and particularly with healthcare, I don't necessarily think they're always the best spokespeople to advocate for these topics because they don't necessarily know how it works with it, like specifically because they've never been exposed to it or because they only have a set perspective of it already. So I guess my question is like regarding how you would go about universal healthcare. How would you educate people on how that could support them potentially, or in a different way that hasn't been done in the past that will just not only increase the knowledge of people already in the government, but also people who are just like on the street, I guess. Sorry, weird question.
So first I want to talk about you. So how old are you, may I ask?
How old am I? I'm 20.
Okay, I'll ask.
Yeah, I am not
20?
that much life experience.
No, you have more going on than you have any idea, and the rest of the room realizes that even though you don't. So you start by saying that you don't understand political lingo and you don't know anything about it, and then you give as advanced and sophisticated description of what the issue is as anybody can or does. So you're doing just fine. And woman to woman, and older woman to younger woman, stop these little ways of apologizing for yourself. It doesn't serve you, and it doesn't serve American women, and it doesn't serve our society. Okay? You're doing just great, and you are very impressive, and you are, this is the crown jewel of America. Our young people studying areas of expertise and skill, and your understanding of the issue is absolutely correct. Now, if you want to know historically, Clinton tried. The Clintons actually did try. Their mistake was what you said. They did not message what they needed to message, and there were these things called the Thelma and Louise ads. Remember? The forces of insurance companies, Koch brothers, whomever it was, put probably billions of dollars into these ads. The American people wanted universal health care. Hillary was in charge of it. The American people were with them, and then the other side started putting out these ads, and they lost the American people. And when they lost the American people, they lost and they couldn't get it passed. After that, what happened, if you look at Obamacare, no Republicans ever want to go there. What Obama did clearly was Obamacare was Obama saying, clearly it was told to Obama by the insurance companies, we'll let you go this far. Because Obamacare, remember, makes a lot of money for insurance companies. So it's the best we can get, and this is what corporatist Democrats do. They want to alleviate stress. They want to help you, but they refuse to go so far as to actually challenge the underlying corporate forces that will make the return of your suffering inevitable, right? And so that's where the corporatist Democrats are. President Biden has said that he would veto a Medicare for All bill. My belief is that it should be a Medicare for all. If you look around the world, nobody's really perfected it. You can look at all the European countries, you look at Australia, you look at New Zealand. Australia probably better than every other country, but they're such a smaller country that it's, I'm not sure you can compare completely. But we begin with just laying it down. We will come up with a universal system. Now, not only that, you said something very interesting and scary. And yes, you articulated it perfectly. They're patenting genes. That's terrifying. That's like that woman in India who talks about patenting seeds and how Indian farmers have committed suicide over it. How dare they? Same thing with insulin. Insulin, I think it costs them $1. And there are people in this country who have to ration it. It's called corruption. And you're absolutely right. The people who are making the decisions are able, it has to do with corporate lobbyists. It doesn't have to do with the best scientists. It doesn't have to do with the best medical minds. It's just like the climate. You have the major climates, the majority of the major climate scientists of the world have said we're on a catastrophic trajectory, but the money that is exerted by the powers of big oil in favor of fossil fuel extraction, it doesn't matter. And the same with the insurance companies and the same with the pharmaceutical companies. So can we make it a Medicare for all? Of course we can. Medicare, I'm not saying Medicare is perfect, but Medicare works well enough that you simply can apply it to every age. You can start there. You know, I got very sick one night in London and a few years ago, and I was taken to the hospital, and it was really terrible. And they think it was probably gastritis. Nobody knows. I think it was my own subconscious mind wanting me to experience socialized medicine. And but I had an experience of tremendous pain, being picked up in an ambulance, going to the hospital, being taken wonderful care of, all these tests. They gave me medicine at the end. They said, when you go back to the States, go to your doctor. We think it was gastritis. We're not sure, but this'll tide you over. And when I checked out of the hospital, I asked them what I owed. And they looked at me like, oh. And I can't even imagine how many thousands of dollars that evening would have cost me if it had happened in the United States. My daughter had a child recently, and she had a baby in London, and the baby was premature, and I had to stay in the hospital for a few days. And I noticed what it was like being in a hospital, because I was around that hospital for about 5-6 days all the time, where there's no economic anxiety. You feel the difference. But that's true of every sector of our society. So how do you do it? You get together the experts who know, how do they do it in England? How do they do it in France? How do they do it in Italy? How do they do it in Germany? How do they do it in Australia? How do they do it in New Zealand? How do they do it in every country where they do it well? And you simply design, according to American principles and American values and American circumstances, what it will take to create universal health care. That is not the problem. Designing a system is not the problem. The problem is the insurance companies, and the problem is the pharmaceutical companies, and the problem is the hospital industry, which is why you need someone who's going in there just for one term, not even thinking about getting reelected, who's not part of that system, to lay it down, even if it means the use of executive orders, to the point where when I leave, you have universal health care. And just try to take that away from them, guys. I don't think that will work out for you. It can be done where there is, people say we need the political will. The American people are not the problem. The majority of Republicans as well as Democrats want universal health care. The majority of Republicans as well as Democrats want tuition-free college and tech school. Once again, that's why they don't want me speaking. That's why they don't want people to hear me. Because these are the conversations that could start a political wildfire in this country. And if and when that day comes, I'm going to remember you. Yes, sir.
Two follow-ups. One for this gentleman. Do you think you said fire department and police department are socialized? They work for the people.
Well, that issue of are they socialist institutions, Bernie had said something along that line. It became very controversial. Some people say the fire department is a socialist institution because it is, the government is in charge of the resources. Some people say it's not. It almost depends on how you use the word. But the point is that when it comes to fire and when it comes to police, it's like public schools. It is a recognition on the part of the society that everyone should have the right to those services regardless of their ability to pay. So whether we want to use that word or not, stay away from the word. The point is that there is a social agreement that the concern for the common good is such that every citizen, regardless of their ability to pay, should have the fire trucks at their house if their house is on fire, should be able to go to the 10th grade, whether your parents are rich or not, and should have police protection regardless of your ability to pay.
And since we treat these institutions as we do should we also add the media to the conversation?
Well, I'm not for the nationalization of the media, no. I'm not for the nationalization of big oil. Like some, no, I don't go that far. No, I don't. But I believe some of these things, you can't begin to use the government like a bludgeon. You know, that's not the answer here. There has to be an ethical revolution. No, I don't want to censor the media. No, I don't think we're supposed to be censoring the media at all. But I do think there is such a thing as healthy shame. I think we should be regulating the tech companies. But I don't think we should be, no, it's not that. But what we should have, when I was growing up, there was a law that the same company could not own the newspaper and the radio and the television, because the government, there was a guarantee of the diversification of information. That I believe we should have. I also think we should reinstate what Ronald Reagan took away, which was the fairness doctrine. So that if somebody says something, the opposite view is allowed to go there as well. And it was the Telecommunications Act, Bill Clinton in 1996 actually, that did lead to the corporate conglomeratization of all these media companies. So it's not about nationalizing media, but reinstating the guardrails that protected the diversification of information and the freedom of information in ways that were true in the 1970s. And I'd like to say to everyone around my age, whoever thought we would be nostalgic for the 70s? You know? But actually, we wouldn't have thunk it. It was a boring time in many ways. Yes.
The reason I mentioned that is because they are not addressing you properly as they are Joe Biden, since you're another candidate as all this chaos.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm sorry, at the very end of your sentence, honey?
Since the reason I asked should the media be socialized is because they are giving you a fair chance in MSNBC and public networks.
Yeah, but once again, let's look. Yeah, but the government is. They're working on behalf of Joe Biden, who is the government. So I don't want the government making that decision either. You know, I just want ethical people. There has to be an ethical revolution in this country. There has to be. Martin Luther King said, we need quantitative changes in our circumstances and qualitative shifts in our souls. And even what we're doing here tonight, we just need to have more mature conversations among ourselves. You know, like I said, we have mature conversations between us, but we don't have mature conversations in the public sector. There's so much just childish narration and spewing of you know, like nonsense almost. Like she's a spoiler. How can you be a spoiler in a primary? Yeah. So, no, we can just need a more ethical society, that's all. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, sir, this gentleman there. Oh, I'm sorry. Here, somebody, Bill, will you hand this to that gentleman? Thank you. And then Suzanne, and then I'll let all you lovely people go because I don't want to abuse your time. Yes?
Should be. So I think tonight was very interesting in terms of laying out policy and going into the roots of the issues. But what I would love to hear about is what I think makes this campaign sort of revolutionary and interesting to me is your rhetoric of love and faith and how to kind of heal this country. And I was wondering if you could talk more about that.
You know, thank you. I have had a 40-year career being very up close and personal with people whose lives are in trouble. And it began with AIDS activism back in the 1980s, and then it grew to being there for people in some of the darkest times of their lives. It would be, yes, the test results came back and it was cancer, finding out your child is addicted to heroin, the death of a loved one, finding out bankruptcy is the only answer. And it was a great privilege in my life, and I learned a lot about how to endure times of chaos and how to transform them. And because I do come from traditions of faith, to me there is an element there of love, an element of faith, an element of generosity and mercy and forgiveness. And that there is a sweet spot when our hearts are open, when our hearts open, we are given the strength to endure, and we are given the power to transform. When I moved to Michigan, to Detroit, in the late 1990s, I began to see things that I had never seen before. And that's I saw a lot of people whose lives were in trouble, but not because the test results came back and it was cancer, not because their child was on heroin, but because of bad public policy, because they had to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, because their children's schools were so riddled with violence. Things that had to do with people living in such despair and trying so hard, and yet their lives were at the effect of something bigger than them who made their lives very, very hard. And I remember when I was living there at that time, I was kind of like a non-denominational minister. And a powerful political figure in Michigan said to me at the time, she said, Ms. Williamson, do you have any idea what we should do about the mental health crisis? And I remember my response to her was, yeah, stop driving people crazy. Stop passing laws that make it so hard for the average person to just make it in this country. Stop passing laws that make it easier for those with tremendous amounts of capital to get more and harder for everybody else to even survive. And I began to do the history and the math in my head, and I realized what you're seeing, Marianne, is the full flowering of the Reagan Revolution. What you're seeing is the full flowering of trickle-down economics. This is where it has taken us. Now, all that a nation is a group of people. So if you have a clue, if you've been up close and personal with individuals and learning how people get through hard times and transform them, then you have a clue as to what would change a country. Because all that a country is a group of people. The same psychological dynamics, emotional dynamics. You have to ask yourself, what do I stand for? Am I living for the principles that I say I stand for? This country has to ask that of itself, just like individuals do. Individuals, in order to heal their lives, have to look in the mirror. This country needs to look in the mirror, just like individuals do. An individual has to be willing to say in places where we're not who we say we are, or not acting on what we believe, we have to course correct and change. So does a country. And that's why I believe the skill set I bring to it is what does make me qualified at this time. And I believe that people who are only discussing these political issues from a transactional, symptomatic, only symptoms approach are the ones who are unqualified for the challenges of the 21st century in this country. Now, also I want to say this. If you look at the history of the social justice movements in this country, New Hampshire, among white Americans, and I find a lot of Granite Staters who do not know this, you should know this if you don't know this. Among white Americans, the abolitionist movement emerged in large part from early evangelical churches in New Hampshire. Among the women suffragist leaders in the women's suffragist movement, many of them were religious Quakers. That's what it grew out of, the equality, the inner light in every man, woman, and child. And of course, Dr. King was a Baptist preacher. So this idea that religion and spirituality have absolutely nothing to do with the great social justice movement of the United States, they have in every case been the fuel for it. That doesn't, the separation of church and state is an important and an enlightened concept. You haven't heard me break into a prayer here. And I come from a religious minority. I know how important it is to keep our language secular. But keeping our language, political dialogue, as secular does not mean it should be devoid of deep humanitarian values and moral and ethical consideration. Does that make sense? And the last thing I'll say to that is, as a student of these things, there is no religious or spiritual tradition ever that gives any of us a pass on addressing the suffering of other sentient beings. Don't tell me you care about God and you're not going to feed that hungry child. Yeah. And it is absolutely my religious and spiritual convictions that lead me to find it unacceptable that there are hungry children in New Hampshire or anywhere in this country, to be honest, in this world. Okay, Suzanne.
Thank you. This is more of a comment and then a request for everyone that came here tonight. I am not here for me. I'm trying to be emotional. I am here for the younger generation. I have with my husband, a 25-year-old, a 27-year-old, and a 35-year-old. The 35-year-old cannot afford her own house, even though she's college educated and getting paid quite well. My 27-year-old is desperately seeking a roommate because he can't afford to pay rent by himself. My 25-year-old is dropping out of grad school because she can't juggle the financial burden of being on her own and trying to feed herself, pay her rent, and go to grad school at the same time. So she has to put her education aside. I've had my life. I've had my education. I've bought my house. I've sold my house. I've bought another house. I've had kids. I've had everything. I can die tomorrow and say I've lived a good, full life. But I am watching my 3 children struggle. And they're older than I was when I had the things that they can't attain right now. So I ask you, to circle back to this gentleman, name recognition. If the media wants to block her, get out there. Put a yard sign in your yard. Put a dorm sign up.
The yard signs. You can all take a yard sign.
Take a yard sign. Put something in your window, a bumper sticker on your car. If you don't want to put a bumper sticker on your car, I've taped them to the side. Like, there are ways to get TikTok, social media. You can go on the website. You can join our New England meetings on Monday. You can join the national call on Thursday. You can become a part of the solution. You can take hold of our democracy. You can take your power back. You can take your voice back. You can influence your cohorts, your uncles, your aunts, your cousins, your nieces. I am constantly trying to put things out there because I know my nieces are watching, my nephews are watching, people are watching. And so I ask you, she said 5, I'm saying 10, okay? Sorry, I'm saying 10. So absolutely. I personally, yes.
In a way no other candidate is.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Out there on YouTube, the first thing the most recent one I watched was the Higher Consciousness Movement with the Sacred Rebels. Oh my gosh, loved it.
Thank you.
I've watched it twice. I'm gonna watch it probably.
Thank you, Suzanne.
So get out there on YouTube, find something that resonates with you, speak from the heart, and just share it, because there is a way to put her in the office, and I know that all of you can do that.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to all of you. I'm at Franklin Pierce University tomorrow, at Keene State College, at Water Street Bookstore. The next day at New Hampshire Veterans Home, New England College, Manchester Community College, and St. Anselm. So if you know people who might be interested, go, tell them to come. Just if you feel moved, please talk on my behalf and speak from your own heart. I want to introduce you to Wendy Zoller, to David Helfrich, to Robin Vogt, to David Fine. There are people from our campaign here. There are volunteers. You could talk to any of them. They'll be glad to talk to you about how you can get involved. I hope you'll come canvass with us, phone bank with us. This is it, This is it. And they've been saying for many times now, I don't know about many times, but the last few elections, this is the most important of our lifetime. But you know what? I think this time it really is true. God bless you all. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Wendy or David or Robin, did you want to say anything? Yeah? Any of you? I think we covered everything.
I think we did cover everything. Thank you, Suzanne, for what you said. We are canvassing every week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday now. Right now we're canvassing out of the Manchester office. We will be canvassing this entire state, all 10 counties. We will have a location in all 10 counties. Wherever you are, we'll be there. We'd love you to join us. As Marianne said, take a yard sign. She is going to be in the state for the next couple of days. We'd love to see you at some of the other events. Go to the website, sign up to volunteer, talk to any one of us tonight. We'll get you signed up right away. Thank you for coming.
And also remember, if you go to my website at marianne2024.com, please look at the issues page. I hope you'll look at my whole health plan. No, seriously, I hope that you will, because it's about creating health, not just treating sickness. Thank you very, very much. God bless you. Hi. Thank you, guys. So good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Spencer, it's a pleasure to meet you in person.
So nice to see you. Bye, guys.
Did you do a hug?
Yes, good.
I love you so much. You did such an amazing
New
job.
Hampshire?
No, we're an hour
drove
north.
down.
We were going to come see you last week and
A few weeks ago.
I thought I had COVID.
I got a COVID test, and so
I had
did he.
COVID, you had COVID.
Oh, you came out?
Yes.
You have one for me?
Yes.
It's so nice to meet you guys in person.
This is for you.
Ashland, Oregon, February 13th, 2016. That's you and I. And I heard you speak, I told you then, I heard you speak in Detroit when Jennifer Graham was there. It was your anniversary of the mentor program.
Wow, wow.
And I was in Boston June 30th. So this is the 4th time, and I'm always front row center.
Wow. Thank you.
And I listened to all live streams. And today, I almost didn't. It was, do I do my readings or do I do my celery juice because I didn't have enough time? And I said to myself, Marianne Williamson, every day before you leave the house, where would I go? What would you have me say? And so I didn't do the celery juice.
Thank you so much.
I did, Marianne.
That's straight from the course. Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? God bless you.
You want to talk to more people?
Well, I want you. You do? Would you sign it for me?
Yeah.
We have.
And I want you to
I'm
sign
so.
Maybe the cover.
the cover.
I'm so happy for you.
There's a lot in
No.
there. You've changed. You were very 35 years I've been following you, and
Changed his life.
And I know I changed
changed
his
mine.
life. So
Thank
that,
you
I just
so
want
much.
you to know that, and
Thank you.
you're still changing.
So is it? Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Is it everything you want it to be?
For now.
Yeah.
For now. You know, you're an author. You think,
Yeah, I do know.
you know,
that.
you didn't know, but it's
Well,
I'd like it if you
I'm
sign
thrilled.
it. I remember talking to you.
No, I remember on the class. I remember,
Yeah.
and then you came on.
Yeah,
That was
it like,
lovely.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you sign this? Where would you? I'd like to have you sign.
I think you should just display this. if you'd be so kind to sign the cover.
Marianne was my coach, writing coach, and a wonderful human being. Probably the most wonderful human being I know.
I'm a senior. Okay. How old are you? I'm 17. Yes, I will be able to vote in the 2024. But not the primary. August, so. I am, yeah. So, are you watching yeah, it's very cool. I'm in government.
That's
I'm
going
so
in a
happy
frame.
for
That's
you.
going in a
That
frame
means a
on the
lot to
wall.
us.
What?
Yeah, it's going in a frame.
Now I want mine though.
Oh yes. How's your grandbaby? How's your grandbaby?
Oh, she's the
I'll
one.
sign this while you're at
Thank
it.
you. Oh, great, great, great.
No, I think you did sign it.
I hope I did.
It is.
Oh, there we go. I did.
I'm happy for both of you. Truly.
We're happy for you.
Thank you.
I'm happy you're feeling better. You sound great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do sound good.
Thank you.
And you relate to everybody. Just
Thank you.
you're being screwed.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
being screwed by the Democrats.
I know, the Democratic Party. I couldn't be in there.
I'm voting for you. I sent you a
Thank you.
text.
I appreciate it. Do you live in Massachusetts?
I live in
Maine.
Maine,
Yeah,
Maine.
yeah,
Well,
we-
I'll be coming to Maine. I'm going to need your help in Maine because I'm going to.
you got my-
Yeah,
I think my phone number
I was
is-
supposed to be there. Yeah, thank you. And I'll be needing to collect signatures and stuff.
Yeah.
Would love your help.
We'd love that.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey, Wendy, I want to introduce you actually to Wendy. Spencer and Steve are friends of mine, and they live in Maine, so maybe they could help us with the
We were going to go
signatures.
see Marianne a couple weeks ago, but she had COVID, and she was testing me before we went.
And he had COVID, too.
Oh, Lord. I'm gonna get your names. I'm gonna get. Hi.
Thank you for
I'm
being
Sophia.
Thank you, nice to meet you.
When we meet you before the election, maybe she's gonna she may be phone banking
Oh,
for us.
great, thank you. Do you go to school here?
No, I go to Summersworth High School. I'm a senior this year.
Oh my goodness, how old are you?
17.
Will you be 18 by the time of the election?
Yes, I'll turn 18 in August. Yep.
You won't be for the primary, but you'll be
Yeah.
old enough for the election.
Yeah.
This is her proud dad.
Yes, very proud dad. Nice
I
to meet
understand
you.
why.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we get a picture?
Sure,
Would that
be
all right?
glad to.
I have to show my government teacher.
Very good, great lighting, love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you.
It's very nice to hear you speak. I haven't been to an event like this before, so
Oh, wow.
it was very interesting. In government class, we watched the Republican debate, which was a very different experience than this. So.
Well, I was in the Democratic ones last time, and then as you heard people talking about tonight, the whole thing going on now is there should be Democratic debates.
I agree, and I think I really liked whoever's idea it was of sitting down at a table, a circle table, and just a discussion, because I think the biggest thing for me was everybody was interrupting each other and yelling at each other, and that's not how it should be in any side of the party. So I really liked whoever's idea it was to sit at a conference room table and just discuss and be respectful to each other. I'd love to see that.
Well, there's just so much money and power involved. The one person I felt was sort of a grown-up was Nikki Haley.
Oh, yes, I
she's
agree.
the only grown-up in that whole bunch.
100%, I agree.
Well, it's wonderful to me.
It was so nice
God bless
to
you,
meet
honey.
you.
Thank you. Hope to see you again.
I hope to see you. Thank you.
I just want to make sure, can this be off the record or whatever? I just want to make sure that was not my book I was signing. It was somebody else's book.
Can we get a photo? They always get you in trouble?
Well, yeah, the way the narrative has been spun, yeah.
CNN, Fox, great. She was the best writing coach in the world. And the best, one of the best out there.
Let's get it. It'll be better. Let's get a backdrop here.
And where are you?
It'll look better right
Well, I teach at Worcester State University.
How far is it?
Okay,
Yeah.
where are we? What are we doing now? Take a picture.
Let's get you in the middle.
Oh, and there.
It took about 5. So
Wow, that's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
so much. Nice meeting you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Will be see you in Portland?
Yes, you will see me in
I'll be
Portland.
working for you
I
in
would love
Portland.
that. Thank you.
I
So,
sent you a check too. So
pardon?
donated to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Fox would like to do it.
Oh, okay. Do I need to put lipstick on? Okay, thanks. Would you take this?
My name's Jamie. I'm with Fox News.
Nice meeting you.
Very nice to meet you too.
Could I have just a sip of water before we go?
Yeah, take your time. Take your time. Yeah, for sure. Sure, I need this is drying on one side, maybe just a little bit. Oh, okay, that looks pretty good actually.
Are you okay with C-SPAN recording the interview?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Okay. So I just had a few questions for you. Okay. And I'm just going to flip this here so I can keep an eye on it as we're talking. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to ask you was, given the difficulties that you laid out here today, what is your strategy to win over voters here in New Hampshire?
Just speaking the truth, as I understand it, as much as I can, wherever I can. You know, you just go from one place to another. You go from a college to a bookstore to a coffee shop, just seeking voters. And that's really what it's about. It's about how deeply you touch people. I think the greatest strategy is just try to be having as deep and meaningful a conversation as possible. I think people hear you on the level that you speak to them from. And politics should be moving. Politics should be not shallow. It should be deep. And I think that there is a hunger for that in this country among people on the right as well as the left. I think Americans want to get out of their silos. I don't think everybody really wants right now to only be thinking about their race, their color, their ethnicity, their sexuality, their religion. It's like, I think Americans want to have an American conversation now. And as I said earlier, it's a privilege to be able to hold the space for that, and it's an honor to hear people responding.
And you did mention the RFK Jr., the reports that he will announce a third-party run. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, it's a democracy. I mean, to me, the beauty of it all is people should do what they feel moved to do. I don't think when it comes, you know, there's a big conversation. Do you run as a Republican? Do you run as a Democrat? Do you run third party? I think everybody should do what is in their heart to do. I don't have any judgment or really an opinion. Curiosity, what's he going to do? He should do what he feels moved to do. We should all do what we feel moved to do. I think the important thing is that the American people, particularly at a time like this, should hear all of their options, no matter if that person is with a traditional political party, with a third party. Third parties have had a lot of importance in our history. So I don't have an opinion, just he should do what he feels moved to do.
Are you concerned at all that given the narrow margin that Biden won on last time, that a third-party run could help Trump?
Yeah, of course I am.
Okay, so I just wanted to move on to a couple of questions about the border. Last month we saw 260,000 migrant encounters, which was an all-time high for 1 month. You've seen the heartbreaking videos of children crawling through razor wire, trying to get to American soil. What would a Williamson administration do differently to address this crisis?
I think the responsibility and whatever blame there is should be on Congress. It is Congress that has failed us for decades now, not providing the kind of immigration reform that we needed. There should be more legal ways, more legal access for people to be able to enter here legally. Listen, on one hand, are there people playing us? Are there people trying to abuse the asylum system? Yes, there are. But at the same time, we must not give up on the almost, in a civic way, sacred notion of asylum, which is the Statue of Liberty. Give me your huddled masses yearning to be free. This is, unless you are descended from enslaved people or descended from indigenous Americans, all of us have grandparents, great-grandparents, some ancestors who came here seeking a better life, and we must never give up on that principle. Now, within that, we obviously have to make the situation far more orderly. We need to make the situation far more accessible by legal means for people to enter here. I also think one of the core issues that I talk about in my campaign is ending the drug war. This will not completely fix it, but this will definitely undercut the power of the drug cartels, because the drug cartels are driving the violence in Latin America, which most of the Latin American immigrants are seeking to escape. That's what they're doing. They're trying to escape the horror and the trauma of violence, almost unimaginable violence, where they come from because of the drug cartels. If we end the drug war and start on a path of a decriminalization, that will undercut their market, and we need desperately to do that.
On that note, we've heard some of the people on the Republican side talk about doing special military operations.
It's a horrifying idea. It's absolutely horrifying. If you're going to send anyone there, even if it would be military troops, it should have nothing to do with military action. It should be helping us so that people can have that legal access and correct and legal immigration. The idea of militarizing the border is an absolutely horrible idea. When people talk about shutting the border, and when people say shut it down, what are they saying exactly? Are they talking about a wall? Or are they talking about soldiers? And what do they want those soldiers to do? We're going to go back. Listen, separating a child from their parents is called kidnapping. And it is child abuse. And it is child abuse and kidnapping if an individual does it, and in my mind, it's child abuse and kidnapping if a government does it. That would not be happening under a Williamson administration. These people are escaping trauma where they came from. They will not be re-traumatized at the border, southern border of the United States.
New York City has seen its own migrant crisis with over 100,000 migrants arriving in the city. This is an issue that Mayor Adams said could destroy New York City. Today we heard Governor Hochul calling on Congress to do more, saying that we have to have limits of what role, if any, do you think that the northern states, northern democratic states, sanctuary cities have in addressing the burdens that come with unprecedented levels of migration?
I support Eric Adams and Governor Hochul in saying, excuse me, where's the White House here? Where's Congress here? Help us. This is a legitimate request for help on the part of the mayor of New York City and on the part of the governor of New York, and if I were president, they would receive that help.
Has Biden failed on the border?
At this point, to say has he failed on the border, there are aspects of what's going on down there that I'm certainly not pleased with. But at the same time, because we're seeing some repeat of some of the things that were most egregious under the Trump administration. I also think that the American people are if we close our hearts here, then we're closing down the meaning of this country. Has he failed on the border? I don't know how I want to answer that question. Things are not going well.
Okay, just a couple of more questions for you. Yesterday during a campaign stop in California, your adopted home state, the former president said Marxist monsters are unleashing mayhem in Los Angeles and San Francisco and advocated for shooting shoplifters. What's your response to that, and how would you tackle the crime crisis that we're seeing in big cities in California?
The former president is suggesting that we become a police state. The former president is suggesting that we no longer be a nation of laws. The former president, this is what a fascist state is. Somebody does something we don't like, and so law enforcement just shoots them. No due process, no courts any longer, no laws. It's so dangerous that he speaks that way. And I'm so saddened, even horrified, that any American is not horrified to hear words like that coming out of a candidate for President of the United States.
Also, my final question, also in California this last week was the second GOP primary debate. I'm sure you watched that.
Yeah, I did.
What did you hear from the people on that stage?
Childish behavior. I think Nikki Haley is the only adult who was on that stage. I like Nikki Haley. I don't know her personally. Even though I disagree with her on pretty much everything political, I appreciate her values. And to me, when I see those people talking and screaming at each other, and I don't think I'm the only person who looks at that and goes, she's the adult on that stage.
Okay, let me just check to see if there was anything else. I think that was it. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ms.
you so
Williamson.
much.
Good luck.
Thank you. Are you talking to me?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.